Dr. Andrew Furey.
Well, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the next keynote speaker. The Honorable Ahmed Hussen is the Member of Parliament. Yeah, give it up. As you all know, he's the Member of Parliament for the riding of York South Weston and currently serves as Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, where he brings, as you all know, his unique experience as a refugee to the table. Born and raised in Somalia, Ahmed immigrated to Canada in 1993 and gravitated quickly towards the calling of public service. Prior to entering federal politics, he co-founded the Regent Park Community Council and served as the national president of the Canadian Somali Congress. He practiced law in important areas such as criminal defense, human rights, immigration, and refugee law. It is my distinct pleasure, and I'm excited to hear this speech, to introduce the Honorable Ahmed Hussen. And he's running.
There you go. Thank you, friends. Good morning. I know we can do better. This is amazing to be back in Halifax. Good morning. Amazing. It's always a pleasure to be back in Halifax. Super d'être de retour à Halifax. I want to begin by sharing my personal journey to Canada and then talking a little bit about immigration and what we've been able to do together as Liberals in the last 2 years. After a brutal civil war, my parents decided to pack up with my family members, get into the back of a truck and head, leaving Somalia, never to return again. And after a long journey, we ended up in a makeshift refugee camp. And after that, after another long journey by myself, I ended up in Toronto, in what I would discover later was indigenous territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit, and landing in Toronto as a 16-year-old refugee. And the first thing I noticed, obviously, was the winter. It was February, after all. But the second thing I noticed on my very second day, as I tried to mail a letter to my mother, and struggling with the mailbox, trying to figure out whether to push the letter in or to pull the handle out, I had the experience of a young woman who approached me to help me figure that out. And that was my first experience with Canadian generosity. And things that people take for granted are sometimes very challenging for newcomers. Figuring out how to use an ATM machine, for example, or figuring out where to find a laundromat and how to get off a streetcar. And through all those experiences, without seeking any help, people would embrace me and help me through that difficult journey. And afterwards, I used social services, made sure that I used social housing, for example, to attend university. I remember going to the community library to print my first resume to look for a job. And because these social services, the very social and community services that helped me and many others were being attacked, I felt that I had a responsibility to stand up when I could, not only to give back and volunteer, but to also defend vigorously those much-needed social services. And how did I do that? I looked around and I said that the only party that has the answer to that, to make sure that we invest back in communities, is the Liberal Party of Canada. And through that journey, I now stand before you humbly as the Member of Parliament for York South Weston, and more importantly and more proudly, as a fellow Liberal. The second part of my story in Canada is one that may not be familiar to many of you, but it is one that is common to, unfortunately, many of us. And it is a reality of a country that is very embracing and very welcoming of newcomers and of the other, but still has a journey to go with respect to addressing systemic racism and true inclusion, and making sure that we include everyone at the table. And in that journey, living in Toronto at the time, I remember many evenings in the summer, I didn't have air conditioning, I would go out for a walk. And there would be literally a police cruiser screeching to a halt right in front of me. And this experience wasn't unique to me, but an officer would come to me and say, where are you going? What do you have in your pockets? Where have you been? And so on and so forth. And much later, having to be bothered at a grocery store, being followed around just because of the color of my skin. Walking on a sidewalk and having a mother pull her child closer to her because someone of the same skin color as myself or myself would walk nearby. These experiences are very debilitating. And although I found a way to deal with them, they weren't right and they still aren't right. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at those experiences, you realize that we have a long way to go in terms of inclusion, and that these conversations must be had and must be continued to be had, because this is a reality for so many of us. And it's not just myself. Did you know, for example, that between 2003 to 2013, the number of black inmates in federal prisons grew by 80%? That in the Greater Toronto area, black youth have 40% unemployment rates. That is double what other youth have, and so on and so forth. So when you look at those experiences, you realize the importance of investing and making sure we address the challenges and the obstacles faced by racialized communities in this country. And it is a liberal government that took that challenge on. It is a liberal budget in 2018 that has made the necessary investments in racialized communities so that young people in those communities can have an equal opportunity. It is a liberal prime minister and our leader who has stepped forward, the first sitting prime minister in Canadian history, to acknowledge the reality of systemic racism as something that holds some Canadians from achieving their true potential. It is our prime minister and our leader, Justin Trudeau, that has come out on behalf of our country to commemorate and acknowledge that Canada will ratify the UN Decade for People of African Descent. This is a huge milestone in our country, and I'm proud to be a liberal to stand with our leader as he does that. And so when you look at these realities, you realize that because of the confidence that we have as liberals, we're able, and that confidence enables us to tackle these issues. It is the same confidence that also enables us to bring in those who have genuine anxieties that are, of course, fostered by fear-mongering when it comes to immigration. As I travel this country, I see well-meaning Canadians who sometimes ask, can we handle many immigrants? Are we sure that newcomers are not taking our jobs? And after sharing the facts that I'm just about to share with you, I find relief on their faces. I find that they understand what's going on. But that is what we need to do to tackle and challenge this fear-mongering. So, for example, in 1972, we had 6 working Canadians to support each retiree. By 2012, that ratio had dropped to 4-to-1. By 2036, ladies and gentlemen, friends, if we are not ambitious in immigration, we will only have 2 working Canadians to support each retiree. Now, as liberals, how will we maintain our much-cherished healthcare program? How will we shore up our Canada pension plan? How will we be and continue to be more ambitious in delivering social programs for Canadians with a ratio of 2 working Canadians to each retiree? Well, the way to address that gap, among many other tools, is through using immigration. And we're already seeing the benefits of immigration every single day in our country. Did you know, for example, that each and every single year, international students alone pump in $11.4 billion into our economy? Together with visitors, international students and visitors together, between 2016 and 2017, pumped in $31.8 billion into our economy. The global skills strategy is allowing us as Canadians to be at the top of the global race for talent, to make sure that we not only get talent into Canada, but get it in fast, so that they can come and fill much needed labor and skills shortages and create jobs for all of us and create prosperity for all Canadians. And last but certainly not least, the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program. We have 32 amazing Liberal MPs in Atlantic Canada who understand that the future economic growth and demographic growth and economic prosperity of the Atlantic Canadian region is intimately tied with immigration. And that is why, through their leadership, we were able to introduce the Atlantic Immigration Program. And it is having amazing success. And it is becoming a model for the rest of the country. Thank you. So, as we look at these numbers, you see them being replicated even in individual stories. You've heard my story. But the amazing thing about this country is that my story is not unique. If a few hours from now, you'll listen to the story of Tariq Haddad, the Haddad family, who were sponsored Syrian refugees who came to Antigonish, Nova Scotia, who quickly reestablished their businesses that were destroyed in Syria, and that have now created jobs for 100 Canadians and are on track to create even more jobs for Nova Scotians. You'll hear, I keep talking about the story of Dolores Lawrence, a woman who arrived from Jamaica with nothing, who started saving some money and started a health services company that employs over 5,000 Canadians. Michael Leachin, another immigrant who came to Canada with nothing, who has created so much wealth and has given back so much to Canadian society. Teresa Spinelli, who I met in Edmonton, Alberta, whose father came from Italy to Alberta, established an amazing business in Edmonton, and has given so much back to Alberta's community. These stories are not unique, and I can keep talking about them all day. But it is important to keep highlighting them, because as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, our leader, constantly says, fear never created a single job. Prosperity is not tied to creating divisions within communities. It is important to reiterate these examples, because that's what Liberals do. Liberals bring people together. And so one of the most proudest moments I have had as a Canadian and as a Liberal is watching Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last year addressing the United Nations General Assembly. Why was I moved by that speech? And I urge each one of you to go back and look at that speech, where the Prime Minister was addressing the community of nations. And he, in all humility, brought out Canada's historic flaws. And he encouraged the other countries to do the same with their challenges, as a way for countries to come together to compare notes on their most long-lasting challenges, transnational challenges, like our approaches to reconciliation and decolonization of indigenous peoples, and global climate change. So comparing notes in a humble manner and exposing our flaws as a way to grow stronger together. And this is not an idea that is only applicable on the international stage. It is very much relevant to all of us as Liberals in this room, because it is through the process of examining our weaknesses and our flaws. And I know that's not easy. It's never easy to do that. But it is through that process that we become stronger. It is through that process, you've heard our leader always say that better is always possible. But it is also through that process that we realize about the better that we've already achieved together as Liberals. We've done so much in 2 years, more than the other guys were able to do in 10 years that they had a chance in power. And so don't be apologetic about that progress. But also look within and check your unconscious biases. When you're in a room, ask yourself who's not being included in that room. When you're sitting at the table, think about how you can expand that table. And make sure that as you do that as liberals, and if that involves having difficult conversations, so be it. But the next election is just over 550 days to go. Who's counting? I guess we all are. But as you do that, look at what we've done in the last 2 years, and look at the better that we've been able to achieve together. And I urge you to share those results unapologetically. Fight fear with facts. Fight fear with facts, because as our leader has said, fear has never created a single job. So knowing that, it is incumbent on us to fight those fears with facts, take our amazing record of growth and inclusion and investing back in communities, and the unapologetic stand that we've taken for diversity, for immigration, for welcoming newcomers as a path to prosperity for Canada. Take that approach, share it with your family members, share it with your neighbors, share it with your friends, and yes, share it with other strangers, because they're Canadians too. And as liberals, we don't just target our messaging to segments of our population, we include everyone. And our signature as liberals is that we try to lift everyone up. We try to ask ourselves how we can do better for the most vulnerable in our communities. And so, as we work hard towards the next election, let us make sure that we share what we've been, as we take an opportunity to examine what we can do better, and asking ourselves and acknowledging that better is always possible, let us also share the better that we've been able to achieve together as liberals. My name is Ahmed Hussen. I'm a former refugee. I'm Muslim, I'm black, I'm Canadian, and I'm proud to be a liberal. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.